Imagine that's what we do as human beings. Right now, I would tell you my own story. Putting one of the dog that I had, right? I put the dog in a cage. My son came back. My son said, "Why are you putting the dog in a cage?" Because, Mommy, what are you doing? You're teaching, you're training that dog not to see us as friend, as family. If you want it to be a best behavior, we have to do training the dog and give the dog love in the house. And that's what I did. So I cannot imagine a human being in a cage. But what I had seen, went to Rikers Island, seeing the faces, the eyes of those folks standing there staring at us. We are irresponsible, and as a nation, we have to do better. We don't have to reinvent the wheel, because there is places around the world right now, as we speak right now, training folks, talking to them, giving them the training, the support system that they need. Pavlov dog, what you do, what you expected the person, the behavior to be, that's what it would be. But if you train that, if you talk to that person, you give them the training, the support system that they need to cope with whatever the problem. Mental illness is real. So I want you all to think about it. How would you like to be treated for somebody to put you in a cage? We will not receive that well. And the correctional officer, I have passion for them because I talk to them too. And when I ask them, how you feel like dealing with this, dealing with your brothers and sisters in a cage? They said that it's not acceptable, but we don't know how to do it. We don't know how to make sure that they respond better, but because we're not spending time to do it. If we spend the time, we will get folks on their feet, and when they come out, we don't have to suffer, especially in the Black and brown community where they're coming back. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Narcisse. Councilmember Ayala.
Thank you. I just want to really just acknowledge how big of a deal this is. I've been very vocal about my own family's personal struggles, and I have a little brother who's, I don't know how many of you have younger siblings, but he's like my son. I practically raised him, and he was, since very early on, diagnosed with mental health issues. And by the time that he was 11 years old, he was incarcerated because the local drug dealers would have him sell drugs for them because he was 11 years old and he couldn't get in trouble. And it started a cycle that lasted till literally a couple of weeks ago when he was released for the last time. And my brother spent a lot of his time in incarceration, in solitary confinement, or whatever it is that, we wish to call it. That mental illness became progressively worse as a result of that, because we're no longer treating individuals that are suffering. We're incarcerating them without the resources that they need to lead successful lives. And so when I look at my baby brother today, I don't recognize that individual anymore because there's nothing there. The humanity in him has been stripped away. And all he knows, and the place that he feels the most comfortable in, is in a cage. And that should speak really loudly to folks. Now, it doesn't negate the fact that we have a responsibility to keep our workforce, wherever you may be, safe. And we take that very seriously. But what we're saying is there have to be other ways to accomplish that goal that don't compromise the mental health of Black and brown men and women that are entering our jails unnecessarily because we lack the mental health treatments that they need. So with that, I want to thank you, Madam Chair, and I want to thank you, Jamani, for, I remember when I came into the council, I said, oh, Jamani's a troublemaker. But he's still a troublemaker, but he's good trouble, and he's good people, and I trust him wholeheartedly because I know that he cares about these issues, and I know that he cares about both sides of the issue. Nothing is black and white. There's a lot of gray, and I know that he considers that. So thank you for being such an outstanding colleague.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker Ayala, for sharing and for reminding us that this body, and reminding everyone that this body does know what we're doing, and we do know what we're talking about despite the remarks earlier today. I don't see any other folks who want to speak before the roll call, so first, shall we accept and file the mayor's veto message? And then second, shall intro 549A pass the objection of the mayor notwithstanding? Will the clerk please call the vote?
Good afternoon, William Martin, Committee Clerk, Roll Call Vote, Committee on Criminal Justice. The items are coupled. Chair Nurse.
I vote aye.
Ayala.
Aye.
Caban.
Permission to explain my vote? Thank you. It's really quite simple. We will never torture our way to safety. And I want to extend my gratitude, my undying gratitude, to the Halt Solitary Coalition, to Freedom Agenda, to all of the advocates, but again, first and foremost, as I had said earlier, to the families who have been so directly impacted and who have had to turn their pain into organized power to make sure that other families don't deal with this. And, you know, as a career public defender, as somebody who has joined my colleagues walking the halls of Rikers Island, I can tell you without question that solitary confinement does exist. I don't care what you call it, and people are being tortured, and we are going to take a step towards ending that today. And to sum up, I also just want to make this record. The entire council has considered and weighed all of the sometimes competing information from various stakeholders, including people who have lived through solitary, family members, other national experts, people working in the jails, the DOC commissioner, the federal monitor, and we have decided that the provisions of 549A are the proper way forward and are urgent and necessary to stop harm, reduce violence, and save lives. The entire council has fully considered all of the information and concerns shared by the monitor, and after considering the competing information, including that shared by other national experts on solitary and violence prevention, we believe that the current retried and renamed policies have led to endless cycles of abuse, violence, and death, while 549A provides an opportunity for a new approach utilizing scientifically proven methods for reducing violence and better protecting people's health. So I very proudly vote aye on all. Thank you.
Abreu.
Aye.
Hanif.
Permission to explain my vote? I'm proud to vote in favor of overriding the mayor's misguided veto of Intro 549. Thank you to Speaker Adams, Chair Nurse, Public Advocate Williams, and Councilmember Rivera for your clear and unwavering leadership on this human rights issue. Let me be very clear. Solitary confinement is torture. Depriving people of basic social interaction for extended periods of time as a form of punishment is a cruel practice that has no place in New York City. Solitary confinement erodes people's mental well-being and subsequently exacerbates violence in our jails. No amount of word games from this administration can change this reality. We can effectively address disruptive behavior in jails by implementing the de-escalatory interventions laid out in the bill language. Contrary to the misinformation campaign waged by conservative ideologues, the bill allows for short-term separation when needed for the safety of incarcerated people and DOC staff. It simply prohibits the dangerous type of prolonged isolation that has killed Brandon Rodriguez, Layleen Polanco, Khalif Browder, and far too many other New Yorkers. I want to express my deepest gratitude to the survivors of solitary confinement and the loved ones of those killed by solitary who have led this fight for years with the Halt Solitary campaign. The council would not be in this position without your work. I pray that we can deliver you some sliver of justice today. My Muslim faith teaches me that human life is precious and that torture has no place in our society. No amount of shameless fear-mongering from City Hall or violent personal threats from COBA members could scare me off from casting this vote. I vote aye on all. Thank you.
Marte.
Permission to explain my vote. As everyone has mentioned, not just today, but honestly for the years of fighting to end solitary confinement is not a time and place. It's not a week in the hole. It's not a month in the box. It's a state of mind. My brother was in the box on Rikers, on Kawasaki, and through 6 different juvenile complexes in New York State. When he got out his last time, he slept on my couch to get back on his feet. For years, I'll hear him wake up in the middle of the night, scream, a grown man cry in the middle of the night. Even till today, as my brother is considered a success story, someone that created a business, that are helping other people get off their feet. When I talk to his wife, she still hears the same noises that I heard almost a decade ago. This has to end. And I want to thank the public advocate. I want to thank our chair, Sandy Nurse, our former chair, Carlina Herrera, and all the advocates, so we can finally put an end to this. Thank you, and I vote aye.
Narcisse.
I vote aye.
Ressler.
Permission to explain my vote? The United Nations has determined solitary confinement to be torture. We all know this. We all know that more people have come out from Rikers Island and the experience of solitary and torture broken, have come out in worse shape than when they entered. The very moving stories about the siblings of Councilmember Marte and Deputy Speaker Ayala are stories that literally tens of thousands of New Yorkers could share with us today. These policies, the policy of solitary confinement is inhumane, it is despicable, and it must end. And I am very proud to vote aye and to override this veto. And I really want to shout out the public advocate for leading this fight with dignity and thoughtfulness, for bringing people together in charting a path forward, and the Halt Solitary Coalition for making this happen. Thank you.
Councilmember Stevens.
Permission to explain my vote? If the goal of jails are rehabilitation, we are clearly taking the right step, because the reality is solitary confinement is never about rehabilitating folks so that they can come out and be productive members of society. I want to echo something that the public advocate said. A lot of times we are put against each other. The people who show up at work every day to Rikers Island also deserve to be safe. But this bill is not about making them less safe. This bill is about thinking about how do we create space where everyone could exist. Hopefully, this bill will now allow us to have real conversation about rehabilitating the folks who need the help the most. And hopefully, we can work together to get to a space where everyone can be safe. Because if torturing someone is the only way you could feel safe, then we're not doing something right. So with that, I vote aye on all.
With a vote of 9 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, and no abstentions, and 12, the mayor's veto message is accepted by the committee. And in introduction, 549A is readopted by the committee. Madam Chair, that is a full committee.
Thank you. Thank you, council members. Let's go to the next stated. It's over.